So as a reminder, today's session is recording. We're at web session number 11 of 12. Can you believe we've gotten almost through the cohort? Wanted to remind everyone that the next cohort starts January 30th, and you can sign up at xAPIcohort.com. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you can put upcoming cohort, click that tab, and that will register you right for the spring session. The spring semester. We are at 646 folks registered for cohort. Today we have project team demos, and we'll talk about the xAPI party and some expectations there, and some call for demonstrations. Behind the mics today you have me, Jessica, Aaron, who is doing production, and Jamie, who is also doing production. Today we're at day 11, so we've had a pretty robust semester. We learned about xAPI, we learned about what it can do and how to send data. We learned about receiving data and creating and what we can do with that data. And then we had some reports from the industry, from the ADL, and all different profiles and things like that. So where your teams are now, we're now in demonstration phase. So everyone should have some sort of product to demonstrate. It doesn't need to be perfect. This is a learning experience. I'm really excited to hear what teams have accomplished this semester, and want to hear about what y'all want to do to continue to grow there. With that, we're going to get started with Team ECE. I'm going to transition over to Joanne's presentation. And Joanne's going to give you a demo on what she was able to accomplish this semester. Joanne, you can go ahead. It's all on you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. So I've done past cohorts on ebooks, I've done video, and I did most recently Team Twine. And so this year I became a grandmother. So when I saw the profile for early learning childhood, I was like, well, maybe this is the best way to get my hands-on experience for xAPI, right? So, okay. So what I did was I found this profile in the registry, and I would like to do all 5 of these with the care interactions, the educational interactions, the assessment of the child achievements, the multimedia documentation and exchange of messages. But for this particular project, I just focused on the care interaction so that I could get down the coding and things like that. And so highlighted are the items that I'm addressing in this project, and I found this to be like just an invaluable resource here. So I have a demo, and it's posted on my website, and people could just click on, use this link if they wanted to check out the actual demo itself. And then I used SwarmCloud for my statements because I just found SwarmCloud to be the easiest right now for me to do. And so these are the types of statements that I'm working that this does. So it's the actor, and then the verb, and then the object. So it's the mother dropped off the child consumed the formula, the child consumed fruit, the child urinated, the caregiver changed the diaper of child 1, the child fell asleep at this time, the child woke up at this time, and then the father picked the child up. Okay. And so I chose to use jQuery just because I didn't have to then worry about all of the design and whatnot. It's just good for prototyping. So this, on the top of my HTML pages, this is the typical, what would be found in the head. And so it's just the links to the JavaScript files and then the Bootstrap. But here is the important part where it's the xAPI wrapper. And so the Crypto.js and the xAPI wrappers are linked in there. And then for each of the pages, I have a custom JS file. Then on body load, when the page is loaded, what I'm doing is going to change the config file of the xAPI wrapper. This is not security at all because it's right here. It's announcing what my endpoint is and what my authorization key is and the secret code. And so this is just for educational purposes, and so that's why it's out there, but otherwise it should be hidden away. All right, so if we wanted to look at, again, so what I did is I did it with jQuery. And so here I'm trying to pick up the actors of the guardian, who is going to drop off the child. And then I just added down in a drop-down list, just generic things. Ideally, in a real application, the individual should be able to just scan into the system rather than type or select from a drop-down list. But I just thought for this project, it would just be easier so that I could do all the testing. And so then this is the statement that we saw earlier in SCORM, but then when you click on dropped off, then you would see the actual statement as it was built in SCORM. And so you can see that the actor, the type is agent. And what I had done is I had just included a generic email in each of my head files as well. And so then this is picking up whatever the person typed in. So it changes the actor to the mother. And the verb is the tin can ECE verbs. And so it would be dropped off. This information here is just the account information that is used from SCORM, and then comes down to the object where then I had it picked up where it's the child one. So then the mother dropped off child one to caregiver one. And then the back end of the code, here's the HTML code, and then here's the JavaScript that was used. So it's like I created functions just to save the guardian name, to save the child name, and then to save the caregiver names. And then with each of this, then I build the statement when you click on the button here, we dropped off child. And so when you click on that, then it's going to pick up all of the information. So it's going to pick up the email that I had put in as a variable. It picks up the guardian, and then it would pick up the verb dropped off. And then it would pick up the child's name, and then it builds the statement, the guardian dropped off the child to the caregiver. Right, and so then for the food intake of liquids, again, I just did the simple JavaScript, and then the actor of the child consumes the liquid, and then the amount. And so here again, the child consumes the formula, and it's the generic mailbox. The child, it picks up the child there. Consumed is a verb from the ECE verb picked up from tin can registry. Again, this is just the account information, and then the object down here. And here with the children too, it's like what you're moving the child from is to get them to autonomous so that they're doing it by themselves. And so this question here is, did the child do it autonomously, yes or no, so true or false? And so then in the object, I put in an extension to say that, yes, the child did do this autonomously. And so then you can track then the child's growth. And then I just, what was it that they consumed was a formula, and then I included the amount in the description. Okay. And then here again is like the HTML code behind that page. And I created again the function to save the child, to do the drink type, to the drink amount, and then to whether or not they're doing it autonomously. Then when I take all of this data there I created the variable for the send statement to send it to the xAPI wrapper under the variable drank. And so then the actor is the child, and then that's the email address, the generic one. And then the verb would be consumed. And then I just built again, the child consumed, the liquid amount of, and the drink. And then that would then go into to build the statement that appears in SCORM. The same thing here again is with the food intake. Now, ideally, a targeted menu of or introduction new foods to the child, as well as allergies should be included. And so, but for here, I just did a drop-down menu that included fruit, vegetables, grain, and meats. And so, and I should do extensions as well here as related to the food allergies and to the experience that the child had as to the different types of foods. Did they like them? Did they not like them? You know, what was their reaction to them? And so in further, you know, when I bring this out further, I would add additionally to those. because I think that information is very valuable. But here it's just very simple again. If we look at the code, it's just saving the child's name, the food type, the food amount, and if they did it autonomously. And then we could do it guided. There's different things that are in the profile resources that I can build on that. But again, it's like I built the actor based on the data that I picked up. I used the EC verbs, and then I just built that the child consumed the amount of food here and what type of food, and then whether they did it autonomously. Then this is the fun part, is coming into the bladder and bowel controls. And so then it's the child urinated, and did they do it by themselves? And again, are they using it, are they requiring a diaper change, or are they able to do it by themselves? And there's different extensions that I can add to really dig down deeper into the information that we can then pass on to the parents or to keep into the records. And so in this case, the child did not do it autonomously. And then it's like, did they defecate on his or her own? And then the caregiver can then say that we're recording that the caregiver changed the diaper, and then they can just add in comments. And so then here is, again, this is the statement as it appears in SCORM, on SCORM Cloud. Right, and then here's the statement that the child urinated, and then again, it's just picking up the data from the statement that I built in the JavaScript, which is shown here. And so it's hard to see, I know, but it's, again, I'm picking up the child's name and the caregiver's name, and if they did it autonomously, to build out the that they urinated, and there is a verb for urinated in the ECE verbs, and there's also a ECE verb for defecated. So then I did have a problem here, and it was with the coding, so I just kept things simple. But ideally, when it's changing the diaper, when the object ID should be considered a statement ref. And so I was having trouble with the statement refs, because the object ID should really go back to the child urinating or the child defecating. But right here, I have them separated, and I need to do statement ref work to improve this. Okay, and then the sleep record. Here I did a child fell asleep, and then by hitting this, it does a timestamp. And I was having trouble. I'm just learning JavaScript and things like that, and so I was having trouble, like, where do these have to appear? And I kept getting errors, and it's like, I love the Chrome developer tools because they would just tell me where my errors are. And it really cut down for me having to go up to SCORM Cloud to see if did it work, did it not work. But using the developer tools in Chrome was right away, it was telling me I'm having an error, what the error is, and it really pinpointed, and it really helped me to develop this a lot faster than I thought I'd be able to. But then, so again, this is just a prototype in Java or jQuery. I would need a designer to really lay this out so that it would be a really good app. But I just wanted to get the basic concepts down, and I wanted to just start to learn about applying the statements here. And here is the child woke up, and then if the child didn't fall asleep. And so again, I'm picking up the same thing. It's just save the child's name. And then here I did a variable fell asleep, and I just did new date. And so that's where you see all of that gobbledygook, but I would want to then like make it more user friendly and format that properly. But then again, like I have to learn a little bit more JavaScript to get that to do the way I want to. I was just really glad that I was able to get a timestamp to be captured. And so then again, it's like when the child falls asleep, and then when the child wakes up. But then if the child didn't fall asleep, then there's extensions in the object where the result, so the success is false, and so then the response, the child did not sleep during nap time, and then that would be information that needs to be conveyed back to the family. And then again, like pick up the child. Again, I think again it would be best to have a scan or some type of system rather than just doing a fill in the blank or a drop down. But then the father picks up the child, and the statement appears as it would in SCORM Cloud. And here's the back end, and it's saving the guardian name, saving the child name, saving the caregiver name, and then it just when I send the statement by hitting that button, picked up child, then it will send this statement to the LRS, and it would include this information that, and using the EC verb picked up, and then the guardian picked up the child from which caregiver. All right, and so these, I wanted to share the resources that I used. I had used Anthony's LinkedIn, the xAPI Foundations course, and I also took a course on Udemy with Jeff Blatz, and the ECE profile documentation was invaluable. And then most importantly, this cohort has really been such a great learning experience. And then this is just about me, and it's like my background's in XML-based content, but once I learned about xAPI, I fell in love with it. I love JSON and JavaScript. And so when I became a grandmother, I decided that I'm going to move from the New York, New Jersey area to Arizona, where my kids are living. And so I thought this would be just a great opportunity while I'm in transition to build up my xAPI skills and my JavaScript, and hopefully I'll be able to get a job doing xAPI. And I'm already signed up for the spring 2020 cohort, so I could keep on learning. And I would really like to take this to the next level, where I'm doing, as in the beginning of the, to go on and do those additional type of statements. And those are really the areas that I'm interested in. But I felt that, I went too far. But I'd really like to do the educational interactions. I feel that there's been so much advance on brain research for early childhood education, and it's really what's happening. And I really feel that using xAPI, we could really capture so much information that would be invaluable to the brain research that's happening. And I was looking at all the different milestones as I'm trying to understand like what my kids or my grandchildren are going through. And it's like, what are the different milestones? And I'd really like to be able to capture that. And then the multimedia documentation of the observations. I think it's very important for young children to have access to like their own products. Like, for example, it's like when I'm watching my grandson, I'm teaching him on and off, and he's saying, like that. And then, so when he goes home to his parents, they just hear him say, and they don't understand that it's like on, off. And then they could really help the learning process by bringing that home, and I could convey all the learning that had happened during the day, and then that could be practiced back at home. And then just being able to exchange the information of what's happening. And I know my kids want to know exactly what happened with the diaper, what did they eat, how much did they eat, and I'm just giving all that valuable information. But I think really getting into the milestones and really helping support the brain research and really doing portfolios for the kids. I think that's really what I want to do in the future. So getting prepared for 2020 spring. And so if anybody wants to help me, I was really doing this on my own. A lot of people that were going to join in fell out. And I really like to, move more into the brain research and also to design. I need a designer. I'm not designer. I really like the JSON and the JavaScript. That's where I really like to spend my time. Right. And
awesome. Thank you, Joanne. If there are any questions for Joanne, go ahead and write them in the chat. I see a few comments to you, Joanne, one from Jessica, and Elisa is seeing some application in caring for adults impacted by IDDD in group homes. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I didn't see the question from
Joanne. If you're open to freelance work, email Jessica.
Okay, I would love to. Okay.
Awesome. Well, I think we can, if you have questions for Joanne, just go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll wait a few more seconds for those to come in. But I have a question. Well, you kind of answered it at the end of your presentation. I was wondering what's next, but I appreciate how you spoke on next spring. You want to start to do looking at the educational interactions and really start applying the brain research. But great job. It looks like you learned a lot.
I did. I learned a tremendous amount. It was really good. And just having that hands-on need, too, I think that it really helps drive it. So there's so much that I have notes on as to what I want to do next.
Awesome.
But I'll need help.
You hear that? Next semester, if you want to continue building on the ECE app, that's going to keep going on. Thank you, Joanne. I'm going to switch over to, yeah, good point, Cassandra, saying this is an opportunity to integrate into the early reading research and how children learn language. I'm going to switch over for Eric to share his screen now. Our next presentation is Unity3d Sandbox, Team Unity3d Sandbox. Thank you for presenting, Joanne. So Eric, you should be able to now share your screen using the drop-down.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. All right, well, thanks for having me present today on behalf of the Team Unity3d Sandbox. And just let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen. Is there a way for you to get a little closer to the mic?
How about now? Is that any better?
Yep, that's a lot better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is a journey that I've been on for quite a long time in the 3D development world. And when xAPI came around, I've always thought that it's just a great match for the kind of interactions that you can do in a 3D scene. The other thing I've learned over the years is Unity 3D or any 3D environment can be somewhat challenging. There's a steep learning curve, but once you start to learn, or once I've learned some of the concepts, it's getting easier. But when the challenge that we're trying to address is how can we make it even easier for people to adopt this technology without spending hundreds of hours and maybe thousands of dollars on outside help. So we took the approach of a sandbox just to keep it very low-tech, if you will, in 3D terms. So we did not spend a lot of time building really fancy 3D models. We even kept the idea of the game itself kind of agnostic. We wanted to see what would evolve, more focused on the features of how we can drive adoption of Unity 3D, specifically around behaviors that would contribute to xAPI statements. So before I go into kind of the whole philosophy, I thought I would just show you the current progress where we're at today, where I know Jay Leone might be on the call. If so, feel free to jump in at any time. But what we did is we kind of took the approach where we would start with where the GBL xAPI project left off, which is really a powerful profile that uses the Serious Games API, and that's the starting point. So the first phase of this project was just to get the GBL xAPI up and running so that we could connect to a 3D scene, and that's where you get things, all of the packaged files that belong in a scene. Now we also said, okay, let's make this easy and let's put that in GitHub. So even if we break something in Unity, we can always go back to a really well-structured GBL xAPI enabled scene. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to launch it, and I'll just say there could be any number of bugs or mistakes. So we're early on in this journey. I did make some progress in the last cohort in the spring, and I plan on continuing in the next spring. So here's where we are today with kind of a refreshed look. So you can see it's a pretty basic scene, but I can use my arrow keys to scroll left and right. And the reason we did that instead of just walking around is because what I've seen with a lot of users of 3D, unless you're an experienced gamer, people tend to get confused unless you have Xbox and a lot of experience there. Now, for my typical learning audience, they're not always Xbox savvy people, but that's changing over time. But we wanted to make this constrained. At least I thought that the navigation would be just simple left and right nav, kind of like an orbit mode. because that's easy for anybody to pick up within just a few seconds if you're on a quest or a journey or an objective. Excuse me. So now the other thing that's been really driving the design of this project is if you think about how popular VR is today, everybody's looking at different ways to do VR. You've got Oculus, HoloLens. Well, I tried to take some cues from that type of experience and turn it back into a flat 2D world, right? I mean a 2D screen. So pretend like when I go left and right, that's like your head looking around. But that still allows me to move the mouse, which is like a hand in a virtual scene. So if I'm able to look around and I'm able to interact with objects, it's kind of like I'm in a VR world already, in a VR headset. But this is a lot cheaper and easier because I don't really need a VR headset. Now the next challenge with any kind of game or objective or learning program is, how do you go from one defined objective to the next, and that's the idea of waypoints comes in. So you see these little green squares, circles, they don't highlight right now, but let's just say I click on any one of them. I made a camera behavior that automatically will bring you to that focal point of interest, okay? And why is that important? Well, because if you're trying to track something like a completion of an activity, you want to at least give people a head start, let them get to the proper activity, and you can see I can still pan left and right. I don't have the up and down working yet, but I've done it before where you just kind of look. You can't look all the way up over your head. You can look 90 degrees up and 90 degrees down, so you have a constrained up and down so you don't do a backflip. But the idea here is now if I've completed this activity, whatever that activity might be, in a sandbox, it could be put this ball in the box or move this one out of the way and knock it over. Whatever the objective is, it could be as complex as completely assembling a machine where everything snap blocks together. You see, I'm just using built-in physics in Unity to really get some gameplay very fast. But let's say I've completed this activity because I've successfully moved all 3 shapes. And I look around and I see there's another one in the distance. I'll click on that. Now it will orient me to the best possible view for this objective. So I found that in the past with user testing, if you give people free rein, they may not find your objective. But if you kind of give them a head start and put something in focus, you'll get more likely interactive completions, all of which we would be tracking through the xAPI GBL engine. So now you're going to see there's this little sphere up in the sky. This shows the power of waypoints. I'm not constrained to the ground. I could actually go up into the sky, if you will, and find a really good viewpoint, maybe more of an overall view. But I can still look left and right. It's a little tilted right now. I'm working on fixing that. But once again, pretending that this was a VR headset, I still have a hand controller, or in this case a mouse. I can pick up an object, put it in space. And what I was working on last night, which is it's just not finished, but the ability now to move things in and out of space is really going to be important so that I can continue to interact with shapes. So that's the equivalent of an object that can zoom in and out. And then I'm thinking about just putting a what's called a ray, like a lightning, a line or a ray that comes straight down from the object so I can see where it's perfectly lined up so I can be very accurate where I put things. And so once again, I'm holding this object. It's spinning because it has physics. I can drop it anywhere. I can go to another viewpoint. The idea here being once I complete all of the viewpoints, I've completed a level, right? And if we're talking in xAPI terms, this could be an activity. It could have the verbs or I interacted with, I completed, I did all the things that we want to do in a typical learning scenario. Now what you're seeing over here, now we're getting into the user interface level that says enter text. Now this is compliments of the GBL xAPI team, because this is right out of the box. What you get is just kind of proves that the system's working. If I were to type my name and hit hash, it just creates a random code, which clearly needs to move over to the left. But this random code just is like my identity, my UUID. What I'm working on is converting this to just use email address or mbox, because if I use the mbox in my xAPI statements, there's so much more that I can do downstream, because now I'm not just a random ID, I'm an identifiable email that I can trigger. Maybe I can trigger any of the external applications that depend on email, whatever that might be, Google Docs, if this, then that, all kinds of good things can happen. But staying in the world of Unity, but when I hit submit, I'm actually registering my intent to play this game. So I've started the game. So if I click submit, it says see the logs for your statement. Let's see if we got any statements off of that simple push. So I'll go to out of the game, actually. That. I'll just hit stop, kind of switch gears. So there's a console. You can see that a statement's been generated here with Unity, gives you all kinds of good logging controls. And you can see that it actually created a statement. Now, but I can go into Learning Locker and see if that statement actually showed up. And that's really the magic here is once the heavy lifting is done with GBL, anything I code and send as a statement will start to show up in Learning Locker. And this, so I'm going to switch gears for a minute just to give you a big picture here. So Unity talking to Learning Locker, or any LRS, right? I'd say it's very powerful because the source statements are easy to see. So just about a minute ago or less, let me hit refresh and see how long ago that started was. Yeah, a minute ago or less. Refreshing now. Yeah, I did as a test user, I completed an activity, and I'm just kind of browsing through. I'm looking for there's a lot in the GBL xAPI that already exists. I haven't even leveraged a tenth of it. But there is the actor within test user. Got a home page, which is our GitHub homepage. I'm kind of trying to use that as the profile, the game homepage for Serious Game URI. And you can see that I haven't completed anything yet, but the system's waiting for me to complete something. So all I have to do is conform to that standard, and I will be able to complete. I'll be able to track the duration. The verb is completed. So let's see what that looks like now out of just the source and in more of a dashboard. So since this project really took life not too long ago, maybe like 2 weeks ago before we got it fully enabled in Learning Locker, I'm able to now already just start mining the data to learn about the behaviors. And one of them clearly is I like to work on Mondays and Thursdays because but over time, as I invite others to kind of experience this, I'd like to see lots of different utilization data, and then I'll be able to track the verbs beyond just started and completed. We'll see did I complete level 1? Did you complete level 2 or 3? So I think you've all probably seen some level of an LRS. I don't want to spend too much time in here, but to me this was just proof that the system is working. It gives me some confidence to go in and spend more time learning the Unity3d mechanics to drive statements. Now that I know it works, it's a good starting point. So I'd like to take the last couple minutes and just show you our methodology of where I think we're going. That looks like a mind map here, right? And so everything, I feel like it's very important to plan out a project like this because it can get very unwieldy and large, a lot of requirements and features. So just doing, I think, a good learning for us and for me this time around was I wanted to do an open source Learning Locker, even though we're very grateful to have, the enterprise ones offered by the companies. I still thought it would be good to, what's the lowest common denominator? Could we do an open source? And that worked, and I've got my link, and everything's going well. I know that we have GitHub for the source code. We're going to really be using that to check in and out these packages that we're creating because I think the idea of a sandbox being reusable truly means that as we do more cohorts and more people join, whether you're a beginner or an expert, you'll be able to easily jump in and participate and contribute. And I think that will prove that while Unity3D can be complex, we can really make some progress from here, I think. And then we get into our project, kind of a reverse engineering of what you just saw. So I won't go through a lot of the planning. I'll stick with what you just saw, which is the build. We started off with a basic sandbox, and then I took it and I downloaded it or branched it in the GitHub terminology. And then it goes from there into what are the actual features that we're trying to do. So you just building a navigational waypoint component, which had that transform to waypoint. Orange kind of means it's done at this point, which means there's still a lot to do. But if you go a little deeper into that, you can see that we could also control where the camera is looking. You saw that. What I hope to do is track completion where those little discs that you saw may turn a different color, or even with an icon, because if you have a color blindness or you just don't want to pay too much attention to color, I'll have colors and shapes and other things to show completions and statuses. So you could imagine dropping in something complex as a car engine. All of the things you just saw would apply. You could still complete oil check, or you could complete, playing a game. Doesn't matter. It's all going to have the same framework. And then just looking at time, a couple more minutes here. I'm really now moving into moving those objects. You saw a mouse. I want to do a mouse over, which will allow you to get more information on the shape. So what is the shape? Why do I need to pay attention to it? And if there are steps, then we will have a step, a next and back button to kind of take you through the steps. Now the nice thing about Unity is a step could be assisted. It could do animation for you, or it could wait and see if you did the step properly. So I think we'll probably have some conditions where I think you'll also be able to reset and maybe even do a show me mode, right? So if I wanted to add a little show me mode, I would just kind of say show me, and I'll just remember to do that later. So we talked at the beginning about camera navigation. Yes, I could add a free-form, terrain following, which Jay did, by the way. Jay did a really nice specialized camera that it's called NavMesh, and I'll let him share about that maybe at a future update. But it does a really amazing following of terrain automatically. Mine's a little bit more mathematical, just camera movements, just like VR. So I also think once we figure out this platform, my goal would be then to move into VR. Rather than start with VR, I'm kind of starting with flat 2D screens. We'll take this into VR if we get a chance. Finally, build a pop-up UI menu with a step counter. That kind of belongs over here maybe. And I don't think we're going to build a simple character controller yet, but if we come up with a game that we need an avatar, then we'll probably revisit that. So you can see, so here's Jay's build. He kind of did the same thing. He took the base scene, and he's got experience maybe in different areas of Unity, and he was able to code, which I was pretty impressed with, a preference storage code. So what that means is if I come back tomorrow, the system will remember that I played, and it will remember whether I'm green, gray, or blue, or finished on any of those objectives. And I told you about the NavMesh, so that he can do some AI route finding. And there's also something that we think will benefit the community of 3D builders. There's so many 3D building tools out there, but Unity has now given a free 3D content building tool, which is pretty powerful. It's built right into Unity, so as you build things in Unity, they just show up in the scene. You don't have to go to a Maya program or Blender. You just build, and that's for rapid iteration. Back to the sandbox idea. So if everybody comes in and they're brand new and they want to just build shapes, you get that immediate gratification, and then you follow along as the code builds out. Maybe you're an expert coder and you want to take on one or two of these branches. We can work together because it's GitHub. And then finally, Jay threw Watershed at his scene because that's how open-ended this system should be. It should kind of be independent of the LRS at this point. So I know I've got about one more minute. I just want to kind of turn it back to any questions. I hope this was helpful, and look forward to sharing more in the near future. Let's go back to chat. I'm following along in chat right now, but I have my screen shared, so I can't really see the whole page.
Yeah, there's not looking like there's any questions yet, but if anybody has any questions, go ahead and use the chat. Great presentation, Eric. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
So Unless anyone has any questions for Joanne or Eric, I'm going to just go through and talk through some logistics. So on Friday, December 13th is our xAPI party. It is in Chelsea, Michigan, and online. You can register. Right in the next to the chat. There's a pod that says handy links. You can click December 13th xAPI party, and that goes right there to register. It is in person with 5 tracks, and they have 45-minute slots per track, and there's an xAPI makerspace. Online, we have 1 online track, and it can be anywhere from 5 to 10 time slots. These online tracks are dedicated to our cohort teams, so we can have a time slot from 22 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on what the team would need and how many folks sign up to present. We also have in-person sessions that a team can live demo. If your team is interested in presenting at the party, please let me know on Slack or via email, and we will follow up with a team form that you'll fill out just to let us know some information about your presentation and to submit your slides and things like that. If you're curious about the xAPI party, we're working on the agenda, but to give you a taste, there is a link, and I put this link in the chat as well, so you can see the schedule from last year, just so you can see how it's structured. If you have any questions at all about the event, or if you need support for your employer because of the conference name, we can also do that. So just let me know and keep me posted. I'm in Slack and email. Some good stuff to know. Next week we have 5 teams signed up for their demos. We have Team Alexa, Team DragonStat, Team Interactive Video, Team Pebble, and Team Captivate.js. So their presentations are 15 minutes, and that means our session will end likely closer to 3:15 or 3:20, so that's just something to plan for. The link to our cohort session is there, as always. It's never too late to sign up for cohort, so if you have friends that are interested, have them sign up. They can also sign up for spring. The spring sign up is open, and you can sign up for the party on the 13th. As always, if you have any, yes, you are, Brian. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to message me in Slack or an email. With that, we're going to end a little bit early today, but we'll make up that extra time next week, huh, Brian? Have a great rest of your Thursday and an awesome weekend.